Fairy Bunny, I'm Zenith Warrior Princess, the cutest of buns, and welcome back once again to the Disney Debate, where I am joined by Kat McBerry.
It's been 84 years or days. I lost track. Sorry, it's post pandemic. I have no sense of time anymore.
What year is it? And Doug McBerry.
I lost track of time. We got the plague. It took years, but it finally caught up to us.
It's been 64 years. Welcome back to the Disney Debate, and while this is a year-end list, this is also technically part of the Emperor's New Remake because most of these are bad live-action remakes or like sequels and stuff, so it still counts, damn it. But we'll get to the end of this block very soon. But before we begin, I just want to say 2022 is not the best year for Disney. We have 14 films to discuss this year. 14 films. And a lot of them are not that great.
And we had to cut off
and
a couple of films just because there were so many. Like this is the year where pretty much Disney decided to dump all of their burn cards. Cause dear God, man, dear God.
yeah, this was the year of quantity over quality, and we decided after this year, we're only doing top tens after this because this was too much. We're gonna have to split this into two parts because we realized like there's so much, and a lot of them are just I either don't care about them, they're so boring, or they're just bad, or like there are some really good ones, but there's just a lot of just meh. Cat, what are your overall thoughts about Disney in 2022?
Oh dear God. I get they were under new ownership. I get they were trying to promote all this stuff after a lot of it was delayed due to the pandemic and everything, but they pretty much fired whoever was in charge of quality control over there because they were just shoving out everything left and right, just throwing shit at the wall just to see what would stick. And I honestly can say out of the 14 films we're about to review, there's only maybe two or three I can genuinely say are good, with the rest ranging from mediocre to horrible. And that is not a good thing. I remember us going over years where we actually had a good amount of films taking up the majority of our list, and it was genuinely tough to figure out what was better than the other. This year, we didn't have that problem at all. I could do my top
Yeah.
three so easily, and the rest was how do I compare the shittiness to the less shitty? It's baffling, just how much they threw at us this year, and especially baffling when you look at the upcoming year, how much got canceled or postponed. I think 2022 really wrecks Disney Plus. I kind of fear for the future of streaming in that regard.
Yeah, I feel like the streaming bubble has burst a little bit, and it's just kind of a shame because, like, creating my list for this year, I knew what the bottom was from the beginning. But then I kept changing things as I saw, like, new ones. I'm like, it's probably not going to be that bad. Oh, it's going to be close to that. I had to move things around quite a bit. Obviously, the top stuff I knew from the beginning, all right, this is going to be good. But like I know where I'm gonna put it, but like just dear God, this was definitely a boring, miserable excuse for a year. Doug,
Yeah, I'm with you too. This was just horribly mediocre. It's like I'm glad they got rid of what's his name, Chapek. Jeez, that was just so much stuff, and how much of it is even worth discussing. I mean, yeah, there's some stuff that while it's mediocre, it's at least you can pick out some enjoyable things from it. But there's just a lot of annoyances or a lot of things that should have been in theaters that wound up just going straight to streaming, and things that were in theater in on streaming that should have been in the theaters. So
uh,
It was very
It was
frustrating.
very mismanaged, and like, here's the thing: I like streaming, but I feel like a lot of the streaming bubble has burst, and now companies are trying to bundle their streaming because right now Hulu is bundled with Disney Plus, and that's a good deal for me. But that shows that like on their own, they're not standing out that well, and I do still think that Disney Plus is probably one of the better services out there in terms of the amount of content you have. But if you're not a Disney fan, then I mean it's probably not for you. So like bundling it with Hulu is fine. It's sad that like a lot of the stuff that came out this year was just like I didn't care for. Before we begin, I just want to reiterate how this works for those who are new here. You might be new here. You never know. So what we do at the end of every year is we rank things from best to worst, with best being number one and the worst being, it changes, it fluctuates on the amount of films, but the worst is going to be number 14, but we're going in release date order. So that means that we're not going to start with the best and the worst. We're just going to kind of detail it from when things released to the ending, which is why we're splitting this into two parts, because there was 14 films. Hope that makes sense.
Yeah, and
With
and trust me, like with the amount of bad films, there's only so much we can cover in like one review. This is honestly also to like save our sanity in that regard and to just not make us go into full on rage mode. Because trust me, there are certain films on this part of the list alone that we are definitely gonna rage about.
Yeah, this part of the year was kind of hit or miss, and here's the thing: we've been putting off Cruella for a while now because like that's part of our Emperor's New Remake block, and we've been putting it off because we don't want to see it again. We've been putting off the Maleficent sequels because we don't want to see Maleficent again.
No.
And we're in talks about how we're going to adjust this, and we'll tell more in part two. But like part of the reason we're doing this now and we're doing Pinocchio immediately afterwards is because I don't want to have to see Pinocchio again for a refresher. That was bad enough.
Well, with any luck, I mean, I was in discussion with Philip before, a title card artist, saying that it might be better we delay some of this till, later, like after the remake of Snow White comes out. That way, when we get back to catching up on stuff, we can do it in somewhat chronological order. We may or may not do
Yeah.
that, but yeah, I mean, that still means we're going to have to review a slew of shitty films in a row later down the line. So it's a matter of whether we do it now or later. Who knows? I just know that I'm not looking forward to it.
Yeah,
Let's at least give ourselves a nice little
a little bit
cushion
of a cushion. I think
before.
I can speak for
Yeah.
all of us when I say that we're all kind of burnt out on the remake block, and it's not just like the format's fine. It's just that so many of these movies are so bad that like we just want to move past this part, and it's just like we know we have to cover it,
And they
but we
just
don't want
keep
to.
coming. They promoted The Little Mermaid at the Oscars. Why?
And it looks awful. It looks awful because we'll talk about that when we get to it. But like, um, for those of you who have stuck with us through, I must have moved 3 times in 3 years, and us getting sick and the remake and whatnot. So like, we're sorry about that. It's just been a slew of stuff, and in the midst of it, we had to look forward to live action remakes. So yeah, I am sorry, but like sometimes like we get burnt out.
Plus,
With that being
pandemic
said,
and everything too. Again, no concept of time.
yeah. With that being said, let us dive into this list with actually something good. The first film that came out this year, well, not this year, 2022. The first film of 2022 was Turning Red, and I gotta admit, Turning Red was a great start because I have it as my number 2 of this list.
I have it at number 1.
I have it at number 1 as well.
Now, the one that I have over it is something that we're going to discuss next time, so we'll get into the discussion of why there. But the thing I like about Turning Red is that it is this emotional generational gap film where you have, a kid versus their parent versus their grandparent, and different ways of thinking, different ways of doing things. A lot of the theme of the MCU was trauma this year, and you can definitely tell it here with this is just generational trauma, and it's about, a family who can turn into pandas, and yet they make it so relatable. These group of kids is just so wonderful, and I love them. I want to hang out with them, and I love the Backstreet Boys parody, Four Town. I have a shirt that Kat gave me. I'm so thankful for Town forever. It's a fun film. It's emotional. It's a coming of age film, and it's like, I think what works more for me than Luca. Like, Luca is that type of film, but it felt like they were trying to say something with it to me. Like, it wasn't just, oh, let's have some fun. Here, it's like they were trying to say something about, like, how each generation was raised, and, like, how she's afraid of her mother, but her mother's afraid of her mother, and, like, how that shapes the next generation and how they go about doing things. And I really liked that. Kat?
Oh yeah, this movie really spoke to me on a personal level because I've dealt with that sort of generational trauma in my family, and trying to come of age, like becoming a teenager, like during a really rough period in my life where like I've been going through all these changes and my family doesn't understand that, and I'm trying to like establish my own identity and like become more close with my friends, but then at the same time my family are holding on, and then of course the whole puberty metaphor thing too. Like I love this one reviewer's take on it. They said that turning red is what if the Incredible Hulk went through magical puberty. And that pretty much is what this film is. But like I said, it's very relatable. And here's the thing: I was a teenager growing up in the early 2000s during the height of the boy band era. So this was basically my childhood that I was watching right here. So it was a lot of fun for me to relive, especially pointing out all the Easter eggs and little references they make to the early 2000s.
Yeah, like, the boy band era was fun. I wasn't openly out as, like, trans or gay, but I was really big into it. So, like, I was kind of in the closet at that point, and I was all into it. And so, like, seeing, like, stuff like that, like the ending and Four Town songs, like, this really brought a smile to my face. So what do you think, Doug?
Screw you guys. I didn't like Backstreet Boys. I liked NSYNC.
Oh, you like the dirty pop? The dirty pop?
I like the
It's gonna
too.
be May. but yeah, I really enjoyed this movie. I love how both there's not just the metaphor for puberty, but they literally like don't even shy away from the fact that yeah, this is puberty. In fact, for a second there, they bring up pads and things. It's like that's I give Disney so much, well, I give Pixar so much credit for actually tackling, puberty, in a real way almost, and not just, puberty, but, girl puberty, which there's such a stigma against that. So, seriously, major props to Pixar, and they got so shafted by having to have it on Disney Plus instead of in the theaters. But
I agree there.
yeah,
Yeah.
nonetheless,
Like, and
I was so much enjoying the film. I love what you call it, when she makes like the fan fiction and she does the really really inappropriate drawings, and I'm like,
how
oh
did
god.
you people get a hold of my notebook?
It's like there were people complaining that nobody
so relatable.
that nobody does
Like,
this kind of stuff. It's like, have you ever seen the internet?
and it's just like I love how, like, I know my parents were strict growing up, and they're like, they saw me on Newgrounds, and they're like, oh, why are you like looking at this stuff? I'm like, no, I'm not. That was my friend. So like you had to deflect because your parents were like, oh no, this is immoral, this is bad. But it's just like, it's healthy. Everyone kind of did it. I used to doodle in my notebook. I used to like do some stuff like that. So all of this is very relatable. And I think it's also really nice that I want to bring up a meme. They didn't bring up 9/11.
That is so
That
stupid. Dear God,
that
I
was
hate
so
that so
stupid.
much. Like, people say, like, oh, it's
I
not accurate. They don't talk about 9/11. Why would you talk about 9/11 in this aspect? Like, in
It's
this
in
particular movie?
It's
Canada.
in
It's in
Canada.
Canada.
It's so
I
stupid.
I know,
Like
and
they
it's just
weren't
like we don't
totally
know
removed from
exactly.
it, but and I mean honestly 9/11 has, impacts that we're still feeling today with the airports and everything. It's like you can't go through a terminal without, all these security checks and things that might be considered weapons. So yeah, they'd still be feeling it, but they don't feel it to the same extent that us in the US do.
Even then, like we don't know specifically when in the year that it takes place, and it doesn't have any bearing on the story. So why would they talk about it? I only bring it up because that was the worst take I've ever heard, and I'm just saying, like, look, Turning Red is amazing, and the fact that it doesn't talk about like stuff and it's focusing on this character story is a good thing.
Yeah, that's what it is. A character story. It's not supposed to be a period piece. Like, that's like saying that every single movie that takes place in the 40s has to focus on World War II. It doesn't have to.
I, mm-hmm.
It's like you can have it going on in the background if we want to make references, but you don't have to acknowledge it. Like, that's like saying you have, if any films that took place in the 60s, 70s have to focus on Vietnam. Again, you don't have to focus on it.
But yeah, I love their group of friends. I think they're all like awkward teens, but they act like they're the coolest shit, and that's what makes them relatable. It's just like when you were a kid, when you were that age, you thought you were hot shit, even if you weren't. You were just like, yeah, we're gonna be awesome, and you had your clique of friends, and you had your catchphrases, and you did stuff together. It's like this is so relatable to me.
Abby and Priya were my favorites. Like, I love Abby because she's like the angry little Asian girl, but she's like so excitable and stuff. She's so
I
fluffy!
will destroy. I will destroy all the things for you.
My parents call it stripper music. What's wrong with that?
I like gyrating, okay?
And even Priya, like, I love that she's just so stoic looking, even though she's kind of being acting emotional with her friends, but her expression just never changes. It's like, I'm glad they acknowledge that there are people out there like that who just are not expressive, but that doesn't mean that they don't have emotions. Like,
Yeah, like it reminds me a little bit of Assassination.
Like Raven from Teen
Yeah, or
Titans.
like I don't know if you've seen Assassination Classroom, but there's a character in there who doesn't show emotions, and it's like it's the same thing. It's like there's a diverse world out there working at Bath and Body Works. Like I see a lot of people, and some people just have just the stoic face, and it's just like we should embrace that diversity. I like it.
and like I said, all the girls, like, they each have their own individual personalities and everything, and even though, like, a lot of them are polar opposites, they complement each other really well, and I appreciate that too, and especially when you consider, like, 3 out of 4 of them are of, like, Asian descent. Like, you almost never see that in media.
It's nice to have representation because representation matters, and I hate how whenever we have stuff like this, people bring up forced diversity. I'm like, no, there's actually no such thing as forced diversity because they're not forcing it upon you. They're just trying to represent a group. What people are trying to say instead of using the buzzword is sometimes people are like, well, they could have gone more with it, but no, here these characters are characters. They work with these characters. Their background matters to them. It's not just, hey, we have a gay character in the background, we did good, right? No, you got to do something with them. So it's like I know some people bring up like forced diversity, but that's a buzzword. It's a dog whistle for people who are having bad faith arguments. I'm just saying.
We watched a reviewer recently who pointed out, who sort of like made an observation that I totally agree with. He said, in the eyes of most conservatives or people who complain about forced diversity and stuff, he says, well, to them there's only 2 types of skin color. There's white and there's politically correct. There's only two genders. There's male and politically correct. And there's only 2 sexual orientations. There's straight and politically correct. So basically, you
Oh
have to put
god.
down, I identify as politically correct.
God, I mean, like as a trans female Irish descent, Italian who may be white but has like family members who are Japanese and who has seen diversity in her life. Like, it just like people aren't one thing. You aren't just you can't just be one thing. We're a hodgepodge. America's a melting pot.
Yeah, yeah. This like if this was 100 years ago, then yes, I could believe that some people were one thing because people were immigrating straight from their countries and they only knew people like who were from said country, or they only associated with people who were from said country. But that's not the case anymore. Like this is the year 2023. Everybody is at least two or three of something. Like for instance, I am English, Scottish, German, Polish, Italian, and Filipino. So, yeah, I'm a hodgepodge of a lot of things. And if you look at my 23andMe, I span the entire globe. And I don't even know how I'm related to half of these people. Like, I literally have like 500 like relatives in Puerto Rico, and I have no clue how that happened. So,
And we have a sneaking suspicion that we're related. I just need to take the test.
yes, you do. I want to know if you're my cousin, so I can rag on you some more.
And what about you, Mr. Doug?
I know I'm English, Scottish. There might be some Russian and French in there. I believe Russian, maybe. Uh, as far as my gender goes, I know I'm just a cis male. I don't know the full extent, but obviously, I'm certainly not going to criticize anybody.
I'm just cat. I am attracted to, like, my attraction to people varies day to day.
And I'm Polly. So I'm Demi and Polly. So like we run the gamut here, but also like one thing, my friend Crimson brought this term. Just as long as you don't have a sissy fit, we're all good. But enough about that. In any case, Turning Red was great. Turning Red was a lot of fun. Does anyone have anything else to bring up about Turning Red before we move on to the next film?
This film got shafted hard by the Oscars. Like, don't get me wrong, I actually liked the Oscars this year. I actually agreed with most of the people and the projects that won. The only thing that pissed me off was Best Animated Film, because Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio won Best Animated over this. And don't get me wrong, I love Guillermo del Toro, I respect the man immensely, and I did watch his film, and while I agree, I could probably put it among, like, the top Pinocchio films that I've seen so far, it is not better than Turning Red. Like, Turning Red, I can watch multiple times. Pinocchio, I'm good watching it once, and that is it. So I don't know why, like, how the hell this happened. Like, I think it's like Disney just being a spiteful asshole. Because if you notice, they were getting away with putting a lot of Pixar movies straight to streaming as opposed to like theater releases. And I get it. It came out during that time when the Omicron variant popped up, so a lot of people were panicking again. But even so, they could have just delayed the release and then gave it a theatrical release. Or they could have done a later theatrical release. But they did nothing for it. They gave it like a week in like the most like five of the most prestigious theaters in the country, and that was it. And I feel like that attributed to why it did not win the Best Picture, because of like how badly it got shafted in that regard, and it is not fair.
It probably should have been in theaters. This would have been an experience to see in theaters, and like I probably wouldn't have gone out myself because at the time I was still dealing with Lyme disease. I still technically have it. It is with you for life, but I no longer have arthritis from it. So, like, I've kind of dealt with that portion. So, my immune system is better than it was. But I'm just saying, like, the fact that it wasn't in theaters for very long is very bad. Doug. Anything to add?
Nope.
All right.
Good talk, Doug.
The good talk. We all like Turning Red, and good talk. It talks among yourselves. Next, we have Cheaper by the Dozen, which is not number 12. I know you would expect it, but I actually had it number 5.
I had it number 6.
Number 3.
Wow, okay. This film actually surprised me because I haven't seen the original Cheaper by the Dozen, but I know basically what it's about. Oh, let's just have two families that have six kids and bring them together, or like five kids and bring them together, and it's going to be crazy. But I think what this remake does better than the original, because this is a remake. But this is actually a good remake because it delves into the individual characters so much more, and it's a film about race, and it's an interracial marriage, and it's not just about the interracial marriage. It's like they have the ex-wife is in the picture too, and like, but they're still friends, and they showcase a wide depth of character for this family. And there's a big part where I knew this was going to be one of my top near the end, where the ex-husband of the main wife in the picture comes in and he wants to see his kids, and he starts to say, "Oh, I want to get custody of my kids because you don't seem to understand. You're bringing everyone to this prestigious white housing authority neighborhood, and you just don't understand what it's like to be black." And they go through this entire conversation, but then the white male responds like, "Yeah, I don't know what it's like to be black, and I probably will never know. I don't get it, but I'm trying, and at least I see my kids, I interact with my kids, and I give them the best life that they possibly can." And it's like it's an interesting dichotomy, an interesting discussion, and a treatise on a race, and like they really delve into the race card because like they not so subtly talk about like how everyone views them as hoodlums, and like it just, and they talk about the ghetto, and it's a very well put together film. Kat?
Yeah, I was honestly surprised by this. Slight correction. So the original Cheaper by the Dozen, like it was a couple that straight up had 12 kids, and this was more of like a flex for the husband, like, "Oh, look at me, I produced all these children, like I'm so cool." And the remake with Steve Martin, it was kind of in the same vein, not more of a flex, more like a desire just to have a big family, but he ends up profiting off of that concept. So again, this is based off like two movies that don't have the best premise, because it's just like, male pride at first and foremost is like the whole subject of this. But in Cheaper by the
Mm.
Dozen, this is not the case at all. Like, this is actually more realistic. Like, you have two people who were both formally married with children coming together, having their own children, and even adopting a few. This, I think, is a way more realistic. And of course, they're all from different backgrounds. Like, we see,
Yeah.
yeah, we see people who are white, people who are black, who are Indian, who are mixed race. We see kids who are both biologically related, who are step siblings, who are adopted siblings, who one's even a cousin. Like, they kind of cover the whole spectrum of like a lot of like families and how they are nowadays. Like, I really did appreciate that, because it's like no sane couple in this day and age would straight up have 12 kids, like, unless they were like insanely religious and were totally opposed to birth control. That is like the only way I see that making
Hmm.
sense in this day and age. This, I believe, was the right move to do. And I do like that they show the issues they face, both, the racial profiling and stuff, as well as how each of the kids are treated different, either because of their skin color, because of their gender, because of who their parents are. Like, this highlights a lot of issues, and especially with the whole issue with co-parenting, between like the ex spouses and stuff, like how one is like involved but is kind of like neglectful in a way, and the other one who's just completely distant but insists on being in their lives even though he's not fit to do so. Like, this was a very surprising movie in that regard. Like, I did not expect this at all.
Yeah, and it's like they tackle big things like bullying, theft, how this cousin was a bad kid and everyone treats him like a bad kid, but like because they believed in him, he actually turns around a new leaf. And again, that speech, because the ex-husband is a football star, he's rich, he's well off, he knows what he's doing, but he's just like, "I'm a football star, I won 5 rings, and I still get pulled over and profiled by the cops." Like, there's some really heavy stuff here, and I think it's handled really well. Doug?
Yeah, so obviously anybody who's been, watching or listening to our stuff, you know how big a fan I am of Fake Doctors Real Friends podcast with Zach Braff and Donald Faison. So yeah, I was listening like they're just talking it up and prepping me for this one. So I was definitely interested in seeing it. I wasn't expecting much, and yeah, this film really surprised me because, like you said, it's kind of a remake of the previous movies and book, in name only. I don't think any of the characters are the same or anything like that. I don't really have any experience having watched any of the previous movies, although my mom had the book on tape when I was younger, so I heard a little bit of it. Don't really remember it. So I came into this with very, very fresh eyes, aside from, anything that they might have mentioned on the podcast. Um, to say this is a blended family is an understatement. I mean, like you said, it's made up of, two previous families that they get together and they have kids and they adopt kids, and they bring in, a kid from the previous family, who's like a nephew, and they're all trying to live in this, house that's definitely not equipped to, have that many people in it. And then, of course, like you said, we've got the previous, spouses in the picture as well, and they're involved in, one way or the other, either actually, just babysitting the kids or not really there, but they still have some sort of relationship with the kids and money involved. And then you have like this whole thing with them getting success and the problems that come with that. Where they start that restaurant, and Zach Braff's character, he makes the sauce, and it gets attention that they
Sauce.
basically want to sell it in stores. Yeah.
Sauce.
So and then he gets enough money to actually buy everybody a big enough house for them, but then that house is not really fit for them because it's such a upper class lifestyle, and then of course it's very white area, so everybody gets a little uncomfortable about the fact that it's multiracial. uh, so there's just a whole lot going on in this, but it's likable. It's kind of real how they handle things, despite how just kind of absurd the whole thing is.
I will say though, some things that do knock it down for me though. One is the humor. Like it's very hit or miss, and sometimes it borders on cringe. Like there are some scenes that's really hard to watch just because like it's like ultimate dad humor, and it's kind of uncomfortable to sit through. And the other is that it's a very cookie cutter plot. Because like I thought this they were going to focus on the dynamics of the family for the most part, but then it's you have the whole thing with the restaurant, becoming big, and suddenly he's the dad that is too busy to work to spend time with his family. It's like how many times have we seen this plot? And
It's
we
very predictable where it's going with certain things, and that does knock it down for me, especially because, like, I love when they're delving on this group of characters. I love these people. But when it's just like, oh, like, there's an issue of the week, and it's bullying, and it's like, okay, and they do deal with it in an interesting way. It's like, yeah, they fight. I'm going to teach you how to fight, and they take care of it, and it builds to the end of the film. But a lot of it does feel like vignettes at times.
Yeah, because think about it, you have like 10 children to focus on in this regard. And like while they do give some credence to some and some are assigned like a certain interest just so you can identify them as different from the others, because of like the whole thing with like the dad's plot and stuff, like there it kind of takes away from like characterizing the kids. Like there's
Hmm.
some that I remember, like the girl who plays basketball, and the kid who was bullied, and the cousin who was a thief. But then the rest, like I can't tell you what their personalities are. Like oh, they're the baby, or they're the one in the wheelchair, or they're the one in the one that's obsessed with makeup. Like there's one note things. It's like we could have just focused on the family. We didn't need this whole thing with the restaurant. Like I get it was a whole big
Yeah.
thing as to why they ended up moving to that neighborhood and why they encountered all these obstacles, but I don't know. I just felt it took away a lot. And then, of course, once we get to the part addressing, the racial stereotyping and the profiling and stuff, it gets really heavy-handed at times. It's like the beginning sets it up like it's supposed to be this fun family film and stuff, but then suddenly we're dealing with racial issues, and it gets like pretty dark at times, especially when the police come and like are threatening to take away the kids because, just because somebody in the neighborhood who looks like them was spotted stealing stuff. It's like it gets too real at times.
I think it's the what's his name, Steve Martin problem, who is from the original film. It was that type of comedy, and I don't remember much of the movie. I remember seeing it once. The original, not the original. This is a remake of a remake, so it's like, but
remake of a remake of a remake.
the first remake with Steve Martin was that type of comedy. It was wacky. It didn't really have a reason to exist, but it was just this funny comedy. A little bit like Father of the Bride, because that's how you know him. And I feel like they were trying to do that a little bit here to get the older crowd who knew of those movies. And so that hurts it a little bit. But I think what I like about this is that even with the problems that bring it down, it still ended up surprising me and being a far better film than it had any right to be. Probably better than any of the other cheaper by the dozen films. I haven't seen the original. But yeah, it's still really good.
Yeah, like I said, this was a nice surprise. I actually did enjoy it. I mean, it's not something I would watch over and over again, but I still do like, for the most part, a lot of the choices they did in this. And if they wanted to, they could make a TV show out of this. Like, I think it could work. This big, gigantic family running a restaurant. Like, there's lots of possibilities there. And for the most part, and I like the acting too. Like a lot of the actors are pretty good. Even the kids were pretty good. Like I said, the humor definitely needs work because, like I said, dad humor. But otherwise, it was an enjoyable film. Although I do feel bad for Zach Braff though, because apparently during filming he got bit by one of the dogs. And it's funny because I read they have these two dogs. Their names are Barack Obama and Joe Biden. Guess which one bit him?
Joe Biden. Thanks, Obama.
Thanks, Uncle Joe.
Doug, what are your final thoughts?
Oh yeah, like I definitely praise this film. It was a nice surprise. I would recommend it. Yeah, it's not, like Kat said, it's not one that I want to watch, over and over, but definitely, I would recommend it to people to watch at least once.
Yeah, definitely. It's one of those films where it's middle of the road in terms of what we're used to from Disney, but I put it up higher simply because there was a lot of shit this year. And it did a lot good. So like I definitely recommend it, at least one watch. Try it out. Okay. Let's get into the shit storm. The next one is Better Nate Than Ever. And I moved this around several times because I wasn't entirely sure. But I finally settled on 11.
12.
This was not good.
I also had it at 11.
12. 12.
So 11s and 12s out of 14. That should tell you something. I'll give you a brief summary of the film and then I'll hand it over to Kat. But I'm a theater kid. I grew up in the theater, and while I wasn't in a lot of like pictures, like I was an usher at my college theater. I was around the play scene. I was a theater minor for a while before I changed. Well, actually, I did end up being a theater minor at the end of the day, but I was a film major. So like, I have experience with the theater. I love musicals. I love Wicked. I love Rent, even though it's kind of cheesy and it changes over time how you feel on Rent. But I'm a theater kid, and watching Better Nate Than Ever, it's like I want to like it, but there's just so many things that hold it back. It's about this high school kid, or maybe middle school. Like,
I think he's middle school.
Middle school kid who he and his friend decide, oh, my parents are away on vacation. Let's go take a bus up to New York and audition for Stitch, the musical, which, For one thing, they say, "Oh, Stitch is underrated." I'm like, no, it isn't. There was 4 sequels.
And a TV series.
So like there was some weird stuff, and it's just like it's his. He has an aunt who's in New York who tried out for theater and was in a lot of plays. And he's just like he wants to be just like her, and he's coded gay, and he's just like, okay, I want to be in musicals. And yet he's supposed to be this big musical theater kid, but he doesn't know the ins and outs of how any of this works. And it falls so flat for me in some ways, because like there are parts that I absolutely love about this film. There are parts where like, he sings Broadway, Luther Vandross's Broadway on Broadway. And I thought that was really great, and I think he does a great job with the song, and I think it's a lot of fun. And there's parts of the film where he has like dream sequences that are really fun, and it feels like they put a lot of their budget into it, but a lot of the time it's just him failing because he doesn't know the ins and outs of theater, yet he's supposed to be this theater nerd. I don't get it. Cat.
This is what happens when a Yinzer tries to become a Broadway star. I'm not lying here. He's from Pittsburgh. He's a Yinzer. So, yeah. Seriously, this kid is, like, the reason why theater kids are made fun of in school. Like, he is, like, the stereotype of every single, like, theater kid you've ever known. Like, both in the movies, on TV, and in high school. Because, like...
He reminds me of Fancy Pants from School of Rock.
Yeah, but pretty much. Like, he is just that kid. And on top of that, he has no concept of reality, he has no sense of foresight, and he doesn't know what consequences are. And, like, because he thinks he can just, I can just get up and go to New York City on a whim, land this role of becoming Stitch in the Lilo and Stitch Broadway show, and my parents will never find out about this. Like, are you kidding me here? For someone who's, like, so into theater, you are, like, severely lacking in the knowledge of the process it takes in order to actually get on Broadway. It is a very difficult process. Like, you face so much rejection. You have to go to so many auditions. You have to cozy up to the right people. Like, it is like a jungle. Like, it is like a it is like a landmine field. It is, like, so friggin' difficult. Like, any theater goer, any theater major will tell you that. And this kid thinks he can just waltz in with, like, good intentions and he'll get it. Like, and the worst part is, he's not even that talented. Like...
He's not. Like, he does a
No.
good job with Broadway, but, like, his initial songs are not good.
Yeah, because, like you said, the whole scene when he does the TikTok video was probably the best parts because he had a lot of energy and he wasn't trying to impress anyone. It was just, a thing he did. But in this case, like, every single time we see him try to audition, it is flat out embarrassing just how bad this kid is. Like, I question how he even got into, like, his high school theater group. And, like, but somehow, despite the fact that he stumbles his way through all these auditions, he somehow is able to charm the directors enough to get, like, a callback, or to get, like, a trial run or something. I'm like,
He fails
why?
upwards.
And the worst part is he has somebody there. He has his aunt who is actually, like, a failure in terms of trying to be a Broadway star to tell him this directly. Like, she'd been down that road. Like, she missed her sister's wedding in order to go to an audition for a show that did not pan out. So, if anything, she should know this. She does tell him, and he just doesn't listen. And, and even, like, the friend, she's pretty much there just to support him the whole time, even though there are times you can tell she knows what he's doing is not a good idea. But unfortunately, she has that unfortunate thing that I had in high school, where she keeps getting crushes on gay kids, like, believing that it'll pan out. And
Yeah.
I can't tell you how many
It
times
does
that
not.
happened to me.
It does not.
But, and, like, so yeah, I, like, felt bad for her, and, like, even the brother, it's like, the brother's made out to be an antagonist, like, bullying him because, he's a theater kid, and the brother's into sports and stuff, but it's like, no, if I had to put up with this shit as a sibling, yeah, I'd give him all sorts of crap, too, especially when he runs off, which could get his brother in trouble. So I don't blame his brother, like, at all for how he acts toward him.
Doug, what are your thoughts?
Yep, pretty much what you said. And yeah, like I went to school to be in theater, and that just didn't pan out. Like the closest I got was, I was in some community theater productions outside of school, and I ushered and I did box office at Paper Mill Playhouse until recently. I had to not do that anymore for reasons. But yeah, um, I was like, no, why are we doing this? Why are we trying to show kids this horribly inaccurate thing? I guess not horribly inaccurate, but the fact that they try to show that, oh, if you believe enough in yourself that you can do this. And even the movies, like, there is so much that you need to do just to get to this moment. And this kid just, like you said, he fails upwards, and it's so annoying
It's
that
very
he
annoying.
doesn't suffer any consequences for it.
There's
And then, of
there's a
course,
part
Lisa
where he tries
Kudrow.
to there's a part where he tries to fiddler on the roof dance and he rips his pants and he somehow gets a call back after that, and I'm like,
Because I just
No.
ripped my pants.
And then he's trying not to get attention from his parents and everything, to let them know that he went to New York without their permission. And then he goes out and gets circled around by all the social media and everything, and he doesn't really even give it a second thought. And of course he gets found out.
he gets found out at the end of the film. His parents almost see it. His TikTok goes so viral that it's on the news, and his parents don't see it because they're too busy muting the TV. And I'm just like, what tone is this going for? I know
Yeah.
that they're trying
And not
to
only
make...
that, yeah, not only that, but because he's like he's just like become super trending on social media and TikTok and whatever. It's like that also should have helped him in the audition. And like even like the people doing the audition, they see this, and it doesn't really do anything for him in this respect. I mean, he still winds up getting it in the end, but then it's like, then they have to shift to him actually trying to work for it. So,
Yeah,
like,
it's so weird
that's so
because,
confusing.
like, only one person in the directors is pulling for him for some reason. Like, he has spunk, but he doesn't know lines. He's reading the stage directions. Like, there's certain points where I'm just like, I don't know what tone this is going for. It's clearly trying to be this Rent style comedy. Like, obviously Rent deals with serious issues, but it also had a lot of over the top comedic moments. Maybe Hairspray would be a better comparison. It's trying to be like this over the top comedy, but it also like it goes this down to earth with moments about his dream and how he wants to be it, and it tries to be like warm and heartfelt, and I just don't feel it. I don't feel it because like there's a point in his final audition where he completely blows it in the audition because his brother is there and his brother doesn't like it, and I'm just like, you knew your brother was going to be there, why did you stop? But then he's just like, his brother's like, I always believed in you, and he does a good job, and he throws a script, and it's like, yay, but it's not earned.
Like when I was in college, and we had a lot of my fellow theater majors and everything were trying to pursue acting, and the professor there was actively trying to dissuade us from choosing the career because they know how hard it is. And it's like they're trying to, if you have any idea of something else that you want to do at this time, now would be the time to not do theater.
And they try to weed out the
Go
kids.
somewhere
They
else.
tried to. Like,
Yeah.
I did theater every year in college, and it was my favorite class, so I did it. And I knew film and theater wouldn't pan out, especially in Rhode Island, because what theater or any program do they have in Rhode Island? The only game company got shut down by Kurt Schilling. So it's like, we don't have a lot of stuff in Rhode Island, but I still went with it, knowing how this is going to be. It's a lot of rejection. a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I never got a role. So, I'm just saying.
Yeah, here's the thing. I did like
Mm-hmm.
theater, both in school and community for about 14 years. So I've been acting from when I was 12 to about, I'd say, 25 or so. And like one thing I learned as I got older is that it's all about nepotism. Because I can't tell you how many times that, despite the fact that, I'd been in choir, I'd taken classes in theater and stuff, that I had a lot of experience under my belt, that I got passed over for roles in favor of the costume mom's kids. Like, that I would, be passed over for these lead roles for people who couldn't even sing in the range required for the roles, simply because we were related to somebody, like either the director, the costume moms, producers, whatever. That is the nature of theater for the most part. Like, sometimes you luck out and you can get by on your talent alone if your talent is great enough. But for the most part, it's really who you know. And
Mm-hmm.
if you can't make at least like one decent connection, you have no chance. And I kind of realized that like halfway through college, especially since I couldn't afford to go to like those better theater schools and was stuck in community college, and it was my grades and other stuff just holding me back, that I realized, yeah, this is not the career for me, and there's no way I'm going to be able to like network where I am now. So that's why I just
Hmm.
it did not pan out. And honestly, it's for the better. Because if I'm being honest here, well, I seem pretty confident in the stuff that I talk about, like both on this show and in our review show and stuff. I am highly insecure. So a lot of times when people do offer criticisms, it kind of is like a nail in my heart. So
Hmm.
imagining having to do that on like a daily, a weekly basis, going to, audition after audition after audition to see people who either dismiss you or who call you a piece of shit. Yeah, I couldn't put up with that. So yeah,
Hmm.
that's why I don't do theater anymore, and I really wish they would have like put that in this movie. Just, the rejection, because you have someone who's been through that, the character of the aunt. But of course, she's played by Lisa Kudrow, and Lisa Kudrow plays the same exact role in every single thing she's in. So of course, that message doesn't come across that well.
Hmm.
No offense,
It.
Lisa Kudrow. I don't hate her, but you gotta admit her acting range is extremely limited.
I also feel that I have problems with portions of this film. Like, I like what they were trying to go with the message of like, oh, I don't want to act, but I can be your agent. But that doesn't happen overnight. And she's getting gigs, and she's just naturally talented at it. And I'm like, okay. But also, Nate is so stereotypically gay, and like, I felt like, look, I have no problem with stereotypical gay people. I'm gay. I'm pretty stereotypical in some aspects. But it felt like they leaned too hard into it, where it was like, like the queer coding is so strong, and they don't outright say it, but it's so very obvious, and it just like, it's his whole personality. That's all it is. It's like theater, and like the way he acts, the way he dresses, and it's just like, again, it's like the fancy pants characters in School of Rock. That was done for comedy. That wasn't serious. And it's just like, I know people who are like this. My cousin David, he is very stereotypically gay. He's in theater. He does amazingly. He's actually like, he's been in theater his whole life. So like, I get it, but like, it just, I feel they went too far into it, and like, instead of outright saying it, we're just gonna make him so stereotypical that you get it. And it annoyed me, and it also annoyed me that like, if he's like this, how does he not know his profession? It does not mesh together. What is this film?
It's kind of funny and sad when you realize that a show like Will and Grace, which came out in the 90s, a time where like gay people were even more stigmatized, does better at portraying the variety of gay people than a movie that came out last year does. Like, you have Will, who is the sort of, oh, maybe he is, maybe he isn't type gay, and then you have Jack, who is the, oh my god, here they come sort of gay. So like, it's like this movie only has that setting, and that's it. It's like, that's the only
It
way.
goes to 12. It's not 11. It goes to 12.
Pretty much, and it's funny because they make him so stereotypical, but they're afraid to actually say it. Like, that whole bus scene, that god-awful bus
Oh,
scene, where, she is, like, trying to get him to, like, stay and go back with her, and it's because, she's in love with him and stuff. He tries to tell her that, well, I'm not really into that. He basically says everything except the words, I'm gay. Like, one of the women on the bus has to explain to the girl what he was talking about. I'm like, Disney,
hmm
really? You're not afraid to have this diversity in your films, but you can't outright say the word gay? Like, come on.
It's a lot, and it's like as a kid we knew this sort of thing. I'm gonna tell you right up. In the cafeteria in high school, kids were calling me gay. I was sitting with a group of kids, and I was the gay kid, even though at the time I didn't know I was gay. So it's like we knew the word.
I mean, that was
And
that was that was kind of how it was in my high school. Like, everyone would just like zero in on the kid they assumed was gay, and the funny thing was, a lot of the time they turned out to be right.
a lot
Like,
of people do have gaydar, but they were wrong because I was gay for girls and not for guys. So
and tomato, tomato. But to me, this movie commits four big cardinal sins. One is that he never gets any sort of repercussion for all the shit he does in this movie. Like, not from his parents, not from the directors, like, nobody. Like, at most he'll get maybe a scolding and that's it. The other is that they had Norbert Leo Butz and Michelle Federer as his parents. They are from the original Wicked. They were Fierro and Nessa Rose. Why don't they
oh my
have them
god,
sing in this? Why?
why,
Heck,
why?
Norbert was also the original Roger from Rent. It's like, why would you get these talented people and not give them songs to sing? What's wrong with you?
They wasted all their characters, and then they have this kid who he's decent, he's good, but he's not like great. You know what I'm saying? And
And didn't the people leading the audition, weren't they in Broadway too?
I think so. I don't know specifically what they were in,
Yeah.
but still. The third thing, we never see Lilo and Stitch the musical at all. We don't see a sing.
We see the very end of it.
and it
Like,
looks very low budget. It looks
I
very
know.
low
Yeah.
budget.
like, are you kidding me? Like, you build this
This
up.
is off Broadway.
That was embarrassing. It's like, really, you build all this up and you don't show a single scene or a single song? Are you kidding me? And the costume looks like shit. There's no way this is a Disney production. I've seen almost every single Disney Broadway show out there, and they are way better budgeted than what we see in this.
The song that they do show for Stitch is actually pretty good. It's probably, aside from Broadway, was my favorite
Maybe.
moment. But it's the ending song, and it's just like, it is a bit samey. It's very simple, but it's good. It's catchy.
And then the last big cardinal sin, this is only one of two films that came out last year that is based on an original premise. And it sucks. Like, you can't be doing that. Like, we had nothing but remakes and sequels and so on last year, which, vary from good to horrible. And then we have, like, two original products, Turning Red, which was great, but then we have this, which is awful. And I'm like, don't do this. Like, we want Disney to make original stuff. We want people to have faith in original stories again. You cannot make mistakes like this. Please.
And another mistake. Okay, during the Broadway sequence, this is supposed to be really cute, but there's a point where he's singing Broadway, and a Luther Vandross lookalike comes up to him and donates $1 and says, "You're doing good, kid. Keep trying." I looked it up. Luther Vandross was dead at that point.
Well, that was George Benson.
Hang on. I think you might actually be talking about George Benson.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, George Benson did on Broadway.
I thought Luther Vandross did on Broadway. Let me look this up.
No, George Benson.
On Broadway. You're right. You're right. Okay. Never mind. I was wrong. For some reason, I thought it was Luther Vandross. Maybe it's because my mom played the Christmas album all the time. That's my bad. I am sorry.
Yeah, he did this song in 1978, so that was like his big thing, and I just love how they got him in this movie for like 2 seconds just to do that.
It's cute, but it's like what? It's like it the tone is all over the place for this movie. It had me like I really wish this movie was better. I wanted to like it as a theater kid, but like it just there's so many bad parts. Final thoughts, Kat?
This movie sucks. Watch something else.
Doug?
Yeah, this is disappointing, especially for anybody who's actually had theater background. It's like, how can you?
Don't do what this kid does. Ever.
Don't take any advice
This
from
is-
this kid. Also, Lilo and Stitch is not underrated. And what the hell, movie? Like, just
You don't even
just
know-
Like
skip
there is
this.
some actual, credence to
Oh,
how they
another
talk
thing
about the
that
audition
annoyed
process.
me. Another thing that annoyed me, like he's just like, how is Stitch supposed to talk? He doesn't speak in the film. I'm like, are you kidding me? He does.
Does.
Have you not seen Lilo and Stitch? Did you just read the Cliff Notes?
I love Disney doesn't even know its own continuity.
He speaks in the movie like Ohana means family. Family means no one gets left behind. That's the entire. This film makes no
So-
sense. 0 out of 10.
So, years ago, they did do a production of Hunchback of Notre Dame on for the theater. It did not make it to Broadway, but it was in California and it was at the Paper Mill Playhouse. But they made it so that Quasimodo, they go more like what the character's supposed to be, in that he's deaf and that he has speech impediment. But when they have him sing, then it's sort of like, I guess, a soliloquy sort of thing where he can actually sing properly and belt out. So it might be like an inner voice thing.
Yeah, I mean they did that in the Little Mermaid
Yeah.
play, because there are times where she's completely mute, but there are scenes where like she has like a soliloquy in her head where she does sing songs. So yeah, it could work theoretically.
It still makes no sense in the context of the film to the play and to him saying he's supposed to be the one who knows about Lilo and Stitch, and yet he doesn't. Skip this one. All right, let's move on to to the fourth film that came out. So far we've had a good one, a surprise, and a bad one. Doctor Strange 2. I have this at number 3.
Number 5.
Number 7.
And here's the thing, I can completely understand why you'd have it lower down on the list. I have problems with it. I put it a bit higher simply because the parts that I loved of it are much better than some of the other stuff here. And, the stuff that I loved were really great. Doctor Strange 2 is a Sam Raimi film. And I know you're like, but we know this, but no, like, it's the Sam Raimiest of Sam Raimi films. If you've seen Evil Dead, there's callbacks here. It is a cheesy, over-the-top, fun, but surprisingly heartwarming and dark movie. My main problem is that they made Wanda the villain, and they didn't have a lot of transition between WandaVision and this, and they didn't blame the Darkhold, and they probably should have blamed the Darkhold and made Darkhold the villain, because it was the Darkhold influencing her, and she never really gets redemption for any of this. But it's somewhat understandable in that regard. Aside from that point, I think it's a fantastic movie where you have Doctor Strange going through a bunch of different multiverses, getting America Chavez, saving her from Wanda, who wants her power to get her kids back. And I really enjoyed this movie. Again, spoilers, I know, but like we always spoil in the end of year stuff. So, but I feel like this film is just a lot of fun. Like, there's parts where he controls zombies, and they show like they do a lot with Doctor Strange's character in this film, and it's just a lot of fun. I do have issues with it, but the things that I like outweigh the stuff that I don't. So I put it at number 3. Kat?
It was kind of the same for me too, because like on the one hand they're doing stuff that in a normal context I wouldn't like or I would think is nonsensical or anything like that. But once I realized this was a Sam Raimi film and he was going like total like comedic horror style, I just sat back and had fun with it. I'm like, as long as you don't take things too seriously, this should be a fun romp. And for me, it actually was for the most part. It's like, do they go deep into the multiverse of madness? Not really. Because let's face it, they go to what? Three worlds at the most, and then they have that montage of like transporting between worlds. So in that regard, yes, it's a letdown. For everything else, like I just kind of like enjoyed the journey of watching Doctor Strange, basically discover the whole concept of the multiverse, seeing what's different, seeing the different heroes that exist in different situations where like certain things didn't pan out or certain things didn't happen and stuff like that. So, I know this whole they're trying to like make this a big thing for this particular phase of Marvel, and they're trying to show that, at this point anything goes. Like forget all the continuity you knew. We're just gonna like find ways to get whatever heroes we can into this and try to build up to like a new endgame here. And I mean, it could theoretically work. There are films and TV shows that make me think otherwise, but otherwise, with this standalone film, I think this is the best they can do, especially under the circumstances that led up to this movie being made. Because this went through, I don't want to say development hell, but because of the pandemic, a lot of stuff was delayed. And they originally were going with the first director from the first Doctor Strange, but here's the thing. When they said it was going to be a horror film, this guy decided to make it way too fucking scary. And this is a guy who had actually done horror before, so if you're going to try to get your kids to see this would have been really bad film to take them to. Hence why they went with
Yeah.
Hence why they went with Sam Raimi, because he strikes that balance between horror and comedy. And granted, he was reluctant to do this because of how bad Spider-Man 3 turned out, and plus, he hadn't really done a big budget film since Oz the Great and Powerful, which again sucked. So I can understand his reluctance going into all this, but honestly, what he was given, what he was able to do, I think was honestly the best turnout we could have hoped for.
Yeah, because like they did a great job of showcasing. All right, these are other universes. Let's have fun with them. Like, again, spoilers. You have the Illuminati. You have Reed Richards. You have Charles Xavier is back, and like there's some really really fun stuff that they're able to do with it. And it's just like I feel like they just kind of went all out and had fun. And is it perfect? No, I think I prefer the What If episode of Doctor Strange as a standalone over this, but this is still really, really good, and I love what they're able to do with these characters. And again, the theme of this year for the MCU is trauma. This is dealing with Steven's trauma in many different ways, and it showcases how Steven is his own worst enemy. Wanda has similar aspects to Steven, and like they do delve into that character thing. I just wish they delved into the Darkhold a bit more, and like, hey, this is influencing you, it's not you. But anyway, Doug.
At the same time Multiverse of Madness was coming out, there were trailers for Everything Everywhere All at Once. I was more interested in seeing that movie than I was in the Doctor Strange multiverse movie. And everything that I saw, and having seen Everything Everywhere All at Once, it's like, yeah, Everything Everywhere All at Once was definitely the better multiverse movie.
I need to see it. I really do. I know it won Best
yeah.
Picture for a reason, but
I
still,
can vouch for it. It definitely deals more with like actual multiverse stuff as opposed to like focusing on the character. Like they still do it, but it's a nice balance. But I felt like they did a lot more and experimented with a lot more concepts than Doctor Strange did.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, this was so disappointing in how they handled the multiverse. This is a thing that I have a problem with in like a lot of Disney movies, especially like Wreck-It Ralph, where they'll advertise that, oh, you're getting all these other properties, other games, other potential worlds that you could travel to, and you only wind up in like two or three of them in the movie, and everything else is maybe just like a Easter egg or cameo or something.
Like
It's
Pizza
like,
Papa. Pizza
yeah,
Papa.
Disney and now to this extent Marvel will hype this aspect of it up only to just completely, disappoint you.
And I can understand that
I mean,
disappointment. It was
yeah.
not really a multiverse film. It was a character film, and so I get that.
Yeah, which I like the character stuff, but it's definitely not what I wanted out of this film. I did like a lot of the choices. I felt like the transition into the multiverse was fascinating. There should have been more of that. There should have been more like multiverse leaping, and that just
Thus
it
far,
just falls.
Into the Spider-Verse is
Yeah.
probably the best multiverse film I've ever seen. So like it's this is nowhere close to that.
Yeah, but and then yeah, like you were saying about like giving us the cameos of Reed Richards and Professor X coming back, and we have why am I Captain
Marvel.
Britain
Oh,
or
Captain.
Captain Britain
no,
Oh yes, Captain Britain.
but,
in
Captain
Black
Carter,
Bolt.
excuse
Yeah.
me, Captain Carter. And then all the stuff from What If, and they basically off everybody in a matter of seconds. It's like, hi, we're giving you these, and then oh my god, what the hell are you doing to these characters?
Now, to be fair, I was a little bit upset at this initially, but this isn't the same universe as What If. This is a completely separate universe that they confirmed. The characters from What If are still alive. It's just they wanted to go a different direction. So that
Yeah, it's just
it can seem a little bit mean spirited. I thought it was fun because I don't care about the Illuminati, and they're the ones who sent Hulk to Planet Hulk, so they had it coming. But I can see your points. It does have like certain elements that feel like fan service, and it does indulge a lot. But then again, that's kind of Sam Raimi's style in a lot of it. Like when we saw him necromancing his own body, and he had like the dead hands and like controlling the demons, like that was very over the top. But I was just like, this is awesome.
No, I agree. The things that were fun about it, the Sam Raimi touches on it were so much fun. I can give it a pass. So it's like, yeah, at least I had fun watching the movie, even if it wasn't what I was looking for.
You want to hear a list of like characters that were supposed to be in the Illuminati, or at least characters they played around with possibly making an appearance?
Ooh, yes.
So they were gonna have the character called Balder the Brave. I don't know what he's from. I don't know that character or the context of what he's from, but he was gonna be played by Daniel Craig. So yeah, they were gonna have Namor show up, but obviously they didn't put him there because they were saving him for Wakanda. They were gonna have Wasp show up, and she would have died in a brutal fashion, which I kind of wish they did that, but can't get what you want. They were gonna have Obadiah Stane, aka Ironmonger, from the first Iron Man movie. Like they were gonna bring Jeff.
Yes,
Tony
please,
Stark
bring
built
him
that
back.
suit in a cave.
Bring him back with a box of scraps.
Here's my favorite, and I was really genuinely curious how this would have played out. They were gonna have Tom Cruise be there as an alternate version of Tony Stark, but they were gonna call him Superior Iron Man. Like, I would give $1 million to see how that scene would have played out exactly, and if they would have actually killed him.
He still would have ended running from his gay thoughts in the movie.
Like, because they didn't approach him for it because he was filming Mission Impossible at the time, but I'm like, that's a great concept because Tom Cruise has the same ego as Tony Stark. I want to see him in that role now, even if it's a totally mocking role.
Another thing that I will dock the film for, and it's like, it's not a thing for me, but like, they keep mocking superhero names, and it's like, they mock Spider-Man's name, they mock Blackagar Boltigan, or Black Bolt, and I'm just like, just stop. Enjoy your comic book.
Yep. Oh, but the biggie, and I feel like this was actually a missed opportunity. They were considering including Deadpool. Cause,
Oh, they should have.
cause
He
like,
should have been the one to kill Wanda.
or he would have seen this go on and be like, "Nope, fuck this shit, I'm out," and just like ran off into the next
like a
universe.
Logan cameo. Fuck you. Okay.
Pretty much. But that was such a missed opportunity. Like, because they still have yet to incorporate Deadpool. Like, they finally got the rights to him, and they're still sitting on their asses waiting to include him. Like, they make the argument that, oh, his inclusion wouldn't have made sense in this movie. And I'm like, okay, well, I guess if they were going for something serious, then yes, I agree. But look at the state of this film. Look at the tone. Like, this totally would have been appropriate for
It's
him.
a Sam Raimi style film. Bring in Deadpool for one cameo. Come on, you did it for Logan. Hell, they brought Logan back out of retirement. Hugh Jackman.
All right. There's one thing that irks me above all else. You've got a multiverse movie where, there are other, Wanda Maximoff families. Not one of them is a multiverse where Vision is still alive.
No, he dies in every single universe. That's a known fact.
Yeah, you're right. See, I see your points, Doug, and I definitely agree with a lot of them. They just don't detract a lot from what I adore about the movie. It's a fun, cheesy, enjoyable romp. That's why I put it number 3. It was just so much fun for me. I didn't want to stop watching the film, and I didn't see it in theaters. I saw it on my big screen TV. Even then, I was still having so much fun. Looking at it, yes, critically, it's not the best film. But for me, it's number 3.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, out of the 3 Marvel films that came out this year, I had the most fun watching this, personally. And again, it's not the best film, but it's the most fun. Like, as long as you don't take it super serious, it's a fun romp. Like, yes, I know it's important in terms of setting up certain things, but like, you just have to roll with it, really. Like, for every bad thing there was a good thing to compensate for it. And I mean, yes, there are bad things, like in terms of how they treated, like, in particular, a lot of the female cast. Like, you have America, who's basically a MacGuffin. Like, she does not fight for herself at all up until the very end when she suddenly can. And then you have Wanda, who many argue, like, got the shaft in terms of her character development in WandaVision, even though I argue that, it kind of makes sense given all the trauma she's been through that, she ends up like this by virtue of the influence of a dark book. And then, of course, every other female character, like I said, you have the love interest that ultimately doesn't become the love interest anymore by the end, and then you have the female superheroes who get offed. So it's like, yeah.
It's a bit much, and you could argue either side, so it's like, I'm not going to say one is right. I'm just saying that, like, when it comes to how they treated Wanda, I wanted better, but that's me.
From what I heard, she actually filmed WandaVision and Doctor Strange back to back, like, at the same time. Because of the restrictions on COVID, they couldn't get a lot of the characters in together. In fact, she doesn't actually interact with, like, any of the Illuminati, from what I heard. So, like, it's all CGI. So she pretty much had to act, like, on her own with stand-ins. And, like,
Elizabeth Olsen is fantastic. Best Olsen sibling.
Yeah, given what she had to do on her own, like, in terms of, like, because she mentioned it was, like, kind of jarring having to go between the Wanda in WandaVision and the Wanda in Doctor Strange, because, she's already has one form of trauma, and then she has this other form of trauma. And the fact she's able to balance it pretty well, like, I really commend her for that.
This is us being reasonable.
I hear there was also the after credits scene at the end of WandaVision was changed, but it was originally supposed to have Doctor Strange in it.
I did hear that,
and they edited him out.
I did hear that too, and they argued it was because they didn't want to take away from, Wanda being the main thing, and, like, having other pre-established characters, like, kind of steal her thunder, which I can appreciate, but I mean, it kind of would have helped to see where this was all going towards, or at least establish that maybe, Wanda didn't, like, redeem herself at the end of WandaVision and actually got worse. Because, I mean, look at all she's...
The problem is, when you're looking at it as a viewer, it looks like she went from a point of acceptance to hard trauma. And we were told the Darkhold is bad news, but like I would have liked a little bit longer of a scene showing us that turn.
Yeah, like at least to show her eyes glowing or something, showing that she's been under the influence of the dark power. Like I think they could have made that a bit more obvious because it seems like oh she just suddenly decided to turn evil. Even though again I argue it makes sense in regards to her character and everything she suffered. I mean, after losing everybody she's ever known and loved, I mean, tell me you wouldn't turn evil by that point. Like
Yeah, it just doesn't gel with the final lines she says. Like she says goodbye, it feels like she's accepted it. Like it just the tone and presentation is different regardless of how her character had been building to that point.
right, I understand that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like I said, I
Um
know the writing's a mess in this when you look at it in the grand schemes, but again, I don't care because this was just a fun romp.
yeah, it's still really fun. Doug, any final thoughts?
Yeah. Like I said, definitely it has its fun moments that help me to, ignore all the gaping problems with it. Um, but yeah, it there's enough there that it still lingers in my head and does kind of take away from, my full enjoyment of it.
Hmm. Um all right, so the next film we're going to talk about is probably going to be a large portion of the podcast. And it's a shame because like we had two of the best films so far in this block, but we also have two of the worst. Chip and Dale, I have at number 14.
14.
I have that one at 13.
Ah. I
One
just
one worse than Chip and Dale. Edit that.
we'll see. We'll see what it is, but okay, Chip and Dale from the moment I saw the trailers, I'm like it feels like a cheap cash grab. It felt like it was trying to be Who Framed Roger Rabbit, but with Chip and Dale and the Disney universe, and we already knew this was going to happen because we talked about this over in diving into DuckTales about how they couldn't have the rescuers in that by name because of this. It wasn't worth it because there's just so many things about it that are weird. It doesn't fit in any known continuity, and it's just it feels so mean spirited and mocking, and it's just like the styles all clash. One thing I will give Who Framed Roger Rabbit: everything looked seamless. The humans, the cartoons, all of them blended in. But every single time I saw something like a 3D animated next to a 2D, it looked off and it looked weird, and it's just like I get what they're trying to go with this, and it's a mystery of like who's doing stuff to these cartoons, who's bootlegging the cartoons. And when I saw what they were doing to like Flounder, I'm like, dear God, like why? What the hell, man? Like that's so mean spirited. And yeah, they get better by the end, but the whole film, you don't know that's gonna happen, and it feels so mean spirited. There's only a couple things I really liked about the film. Detective Gumby, the who's like this not so secretly evil threat, who's like the guy behind everything, and I'm just like, yeah, I called it, but it's a lot of fun. And then there was a joke where a hand puppet comes on screen, and I'm just like, okay, that's funny. But there's just so much that just doesn't land, and like also they're speaking, and it's just like it feels weird, and Ugly Sonic's there. Why a cat?
Why? Oh god, why was this movie made? Like, I'm just gonna say it straight out. I absolutely fucking loathe this movie with the passion of 1,000 suns. I absolutely hate everything about this. There's only one thing I will give this movie credit for, and that is the animation. And I'm not talking about like the seamless blend of animation, because there are scenes where you can tell just how bad the rendering is, and them trying to like make these two different animated styles exist in the same space. But for the most part, I give them kudos for sticking to the original animation of all these shows they are trying to incorporate in the same universe that all have different styles, ranging from 2D to 3D to claymation, so forth. Like, I give them props for that for at least sticking true and not, bastardizing a lot of like the original designs. That is the only thing I will give it credit for. Everything else I absolutely hate about this. I hate the premise. I hate the characters. I hate the voice acting. I hate the humor. I hate the story. I hate every single goddamn thing about this fucking film. Like, this should not have been made. And the fact that they are trying to make this as a spiritual successor to Roger Rabbit, one of the greatest films of all time, is a fucking insult. I absolutely despise it for that.
Agreed.
Because, like...
Doug. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Yep. So, Disney and whoever worked on this film, you owe the crew, the creatives at DuckTales 2017 a massive apology. And also, you need to dig up the grave and apologize to the corpse of Bobby Driscoll. Because what the hell?
What the hell was up? Let's get into this. The secret villain, the twist villain, spoilers. But who cares? Fuck this movie. The twist villain is Peter Pan. Because he grew too old to be used in film, something that the real-life Bobby Driscoll had happen. You may continue.
Yep, and then he had trouble getting, roles and things. He moves to New York. He gets a drug problem. I think he just up and, died somewhere, and he winds up, like, in an unmarked grave on, like, Roosevelt Island or something, and nobody knew what even happened to him for years. And for Disney to, basically have the very much parallel to that in this character of the aged Peter Pan, it feels really bad-spirited and really like you're kicking Bobby Driscoll while he's dead. You've gone to his grave and spit on it,
and
if you can even find it.
And it doesn't even make sense in context. Like, it's already mean-spirited. But the thing is, the whole premise of the movie is that they have this machine that can either upgrade people to 3D, bring them back to 2D, or it could change them to bootleg. Like, there's machines that can change how you appear, and he doesn't get the surgery. Like, just because he didn't have it back then doesn't mean he can't get it now. And it's just like, no, I'm going to completely piss on the corpse of the person who played Peter Pan by turning him into this twist villain for no reason. It was so maddening.
Worse yet, there's such a wasted opportunity in this. Jim Cummings does make a cameo as Pete in the movie, and it would be so easy. In fact, like, what they do at the end basically resembles the character of Fat Cat. It would have been just so easy to have had him be the villain the whole time. But no, they had to go with this convoluted, elaborate, dumb, offensive thing with Peter Pan. And it's so frustrating.
Another thing that really confuses and annoys me is, like, they show that Peter Pan grew up and that other toons in the film, this film, can grow up, but nobody does. In fact, he runs into Cubby, one of, like, the Lost Boys from Peter Pan, and he looks exactly the same. He is still a child. So how did he stay the way he is, but Peter grew up? That makes no sense. That makes absolutely no sense in the context. If that's the case, then how come all these other, like, TV and movie characters we see that pop up in cameos throughout the film, who had been in stuff that were decades old, why are they still the same age? That makes no sense.
It's frustrating, and, like, there are just moments that I had to keep pausing this film because I was angry. There's a moment where they go down, like, the Merry Melodies lane, and it's clearly a reminiscent shot from Who Framed Roger Rabbit, when they're showcasing, like, the Toon World and everyone in it. Except, then they showcase, oh no, this is the black market. Everyone here is selling drugs, and, like, cheese is a drug. And I'm like, come on. Come on. Like, really? Like, you have to go that route? Why does everything have to be a dark joke? I like some dark comedy, but it has to be in moderation. And even that, I don't like when it's done to my beloved properties. I don't like what they did here. The only joke that really landed for me was, like, the Chipmunks rapping, because they were making fun of Alvin and the Chipmunks doing the rapping thing beforehand, and the sock puppet gag. But even then, like, that's like two things in the movie that really made me laugh. Everything else was just like, let's see if we can make this a dark joke. Ha 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 ha. And then at the end, everything's fine.
You know what the plot of this movie was? It was Scooby-Doo. You remember the Scooby-Doo movie with Freddie Prinze Jr., Sarah Michelle Gellar? Same exact plot. And here's the thing, I don't think that movie's a masterpiece by any means, but the concept made more sense for that show than Chip and Dale does for this. It's like, yes, Chip and Dale did solve mysteries, but that wasn't the only thing they did. That wasn't the big thing they were known for. They were known for these high-stake adventures. They were known for rescuing people. So why is this whole thing...
The Rescue Rangers.
Yeah, so why is this whole thing like a murder mystery or like a kidnapping mystery or something? There are other characters out there, other franchises that they could have banked off that would have made more sense than this. But they're acting like Chip and Dale is like this big, phenomenal thing. And while, yes, it was a big staple in the childhood of people like me who grew up with Disney Afternoon and stuff, but it wasn't the big thing. Heck, DuckTales was way bigger than Chip and Dale was. Darkwing Duck was bigger than Chip and Dale was.
I would argue that Darkwing Duck was way bigger and that it was a slap in the face because we're still waiting for the Darkwing Duck show, and I've been saying this every single time. It hasn't been made yet. And at the end of the film, Darkwing Duck shows up. It's like, where's my movie? Where's my show? I'm
like, boo!
Like, it would have made more sense to have Darkwing be the focus of this, because he actually had to do mysteries in addition to crime fighting, just like Batman did. But I'm glad they didn't, because if that was the case, we wouldn't have gotten any of the Darkwing episodes we did in the DuckTales series. So thank God for that.
I'm actually getting angry talking about this. This is part of why we're splitting this into two, because like there's some good ones, but like a lot of the films this year were like this. What was the fucking tone? And Chapek, man, you've done a lot of bad shit, but like you proved this.
Like the thing that like pisses me off the most is that, by virtue of what the message of this film is that Disney is saying that the two big baddies, according to them, are former child stars and bootleggers. And it's like, okay, so you're mad at child stars for striking back after you discarded them like garbage. Like, you built them up as golden idols only to discard them when they were no longer profitable. But they're the bad guys? And bootleggers. Yes, I get there's a lot of, like, you know, bootleg stuff. We've seen it, like, by virtue of Phalis' show and stuff.
Phalis bootleg zones.
Yeah.
I'm completely useless now.
But you know why so many bootleg versions of that exist? It's because Disney holds a monopoly on a lot of these, a lot of these stories, a lot of these movie concepts, these properties that they will not let go of. Like, by now, they should have relinquished the rights to Mickey Mouse, and he should be in the public domain for anyone to use. But they will not let him go. Same thing with a lot of other characters. Like, we finally got that one Winnie the Pooh movie that's about, like, him being a serial killer, because the copyright was up for that. I guarantee you Disney's not happy about that. But it's like...
And it's not even the Disney version of Winnie the Pooh.
Right.
And that's the thing.
The
like,
original story.
The copyright is for the character of Winnie the Pooh. It's not for the rest of the characters. And it's like, yeah, what we got was kind of shitty. But even still, at least people are trying new things, you know, with Bambi and with Winnie the Pooh. Like, just try, instead of, no, you can't do that. It's creatively stripping people and not allowing them to do things.
Right, and it's ridiculous. Like, and why is Ugly Sonic in this? Somebody explain that to me. Like, I get
he's a funny joke, but like he shouldn't have been more than once.
But like, I get originally they wanted to do Jar Jar Binks, and I don't understand why they didn't go with that, because Disney owns Jar Jar Binks. So it would have made more sense to have him there, especially because he's universally loathed by the Star Wars fandom. And they could have redeemed him in this, the same way they sort of redeemed Ugly Sonic. But Ugly Sonic makes no sense in the context of this film by its own rules. It's like, okay, he was like universally lambasted because of how bad the animation was on him. So why is it that he exists as a separate entity of Sonic? So you're telling me that,
Especially when they can do facial reconstruction surgeries.
yeah,
Like, it
like
just
again, it makes no sense. Like, okay, Sonic got re-rendered and it was bad, so you would think, okay, he got re-rendered again into proper CGI, but no, suddenly Ugly Sonic is an entirely different entity of the original Sonic. And not only that, he's banking off of the fact that people hate his animation so much. And it's like, okay, well, if he can find success this way, why didn't Peter Pan do the same? Like, nothing makes sense in this film.
also, and I hate to bring this up, a mouse fucks a fly and has
Yes.
babies.
Oh my, like, I won't lie, that part made me laugh. Like, I was really shocked. I'm like, wow, they really went that route by having Gadget hook up with Zipper and them having these horrible mutant babies. but but that's, at least they showed them, like, 'cause that's another thing that pisses me off too. This is not about the Rescue Rangers. We see them briefly in the beginning. We see Monterey Jack briefly before he's kidnapped, and then we see Gadget and Zipper way later in the film to help them get to the point where the climax happens. That is it. They should have been there from the get-go if they wanted this to be a Chip and Dale Rescue Ranger thing, but no, they just focus on Chip and Dale. This is a fail. Like, why do you do that?
There's so many things wrong about it, and I know some people did like it. I'm sorry, but there's nothing enjoyable about this to me. This is like the bottom of the barrel scrapings.
This should not exist. This absolutely should not exist. Or if it does, it should exist with different characters. And I hate the fact that they kept Chip and Dale, the characters, out of DuckTales because of this reason. Especially when you consider these are not the same Chip and Dales we know. Not the originals from 1940, not the ones we know from the Rescue Rangers in the 1980s. These are not the same characters by any means. There is no reason that they should have kept them out of DuckTales in separation for these two characters who sound nothing like the originals, who act nothing like the originals, and are just wholly unpleasant to watch.
And they get their episodes wrong, too. So.
Again, Disney does not know its own continuity.
Doug, final thoughts?
So back in the 80s, you had Chip and Dale Rescue Rangers, and it was great. You also had Roger Rabbit. You had a film where two studios that hated each other managed to put aside their differences for this one time and make this great creative product. And then you have this, which is trying to be Roger Rabbit, but failing so spectacularly because all it is, money changing hands and, oh, look at the Easter eggs that we put in here, but having so very little to do with the source material, and basically just not even having any heart whatsoever.
It's soulless, it's heartless, and it's very mean-spirited.
Yeah,
Pass.
to quote Angry Video Game Nerd, fuck it to hell, fuck it to damnation, fuck it into the oblivion of mankind.
Yeah, this is shit pickles balls or whatever the nerd would say. And in any case, it is not worthy of your attention or time. Let's move on to something different. Now, this one is also bad, but it's better. I mean, it can only go uphill from there, but it's still not good. Hollywood Stargirl I had at number 9.
Number 8.
Number 5.
Huh. So, Kat, I want you to take this one because I was confused watching this. They didn't set up a lot because apparently there was a film before this that I had not seen, just Stargirl. Mm-hmm. So, Kat, just enlighten me and then enlighten the audience about what this is about because you had to tell me.
Yeah, sorry, I thought I made it clear before that this was a sequel. But honestly, you should be grateful that you didn't see the first one because the first one was bad. Like when that came out the year, I think that was one of the few bad ones that came out. Because so here's the reason why it's bad. So the original Stargirl is basically about a muse making everyone else's lives better around her, but not getting any credit or recognition for it. So it focuses on this boy who is like bland as shit. He is like the most boring character I've ever witnessed in a film, and his whole life changes when this girl, whose name is actually Stargirl, starts like get becoming interested in him, and she gives him little gifts and stuff and things that she knows he likes. And then she decides to actually enroll in school because up to this point she was homeschooled. She enrolls in school and starts interacting with other kids, and she starts helping them, inspiring them. The sports team, which was really shitty, suddenly became good because she joined the cheer team and was cheering for them, and suddenly everybody decided to cheer because they never did that before for some reason. Things start happening and it's all good and stuff. But then, little tragedies happen here and there, like someone gets hurt or someone gets their bike stolen or something. And somehow it's her fault. Like, they go out of their way to blame her when things go bad, and it makes no sense whatsoever. And the boy has the gall to actually say, well, maybe you should act like normal people, try to blend in instead of, just being you all the time. And she actually does it for a bit, but it's like killing her spiritually. So eventually at the end, she goes back to being who she is, makes things right, in their eyes, and then she leaves. So it's like, she was here, she did good things, and then she left. That was the first film, and I hated it. I absolutely hated it. It's the epitome of, this girl exists for the pure reason of making a man's life better. I hated it. I absolutely hated it. The sequel, however, like, I was worried going in. I was so surprised that this sequel even got greenlit based on the first. The sequel is actually way, way better, and I think it's because they actually learned their mistakes from the first film.
It's still not great, but I will agree that from what you're telling me, it is better. So the premise of this film is that Stargirl, what's her real name? They never say it in the film.
That is her name, Stargirl.
That's so pretentious. I hate that.
Her mother's kind of like a hippie.
Yeah, her mom's a hippie.
Yeah.
And she dresses weird, so.
So Stargirl, in the worst fashion ever, and I will talk about this later. We'll get back to that. But they're moving out to Hollywood, and because she just got a big gig out in Hollywood, and she meets a bunch of new people. She helps their lives. They record a song together, and she helps people make a movie, and she improves other people's lives. The big thing for me that really struck me from the beginning of the film, I just felt this was so pretentious. And it gets better in the second half. But man, is it so pretentious. Like, the fact that her name is Stargirl, the fact that, like, they're part of this hippie family, that she plays a ukulele and like sings, and it's supposed to be the best thing ever, and I'm sorry, but like, I've heard ukulele songs so many times and it hasn't been good. Like, the best use of ukulele was in Somewhere Over the Rainbow in 50 First Dates, because it actually worked with the context of the film, but here it just does not. And the fashions of the film, look, I know I'm gay, but I'm not super into fashion, but like, everything is so yellow and off, and everything she wears is so gaudy, and I'm just like, no, it's like the 60s threw up, but without the color. Like, it's just awful, and I'm just like, I can't get over it. It's badly shot, it's badly paced, but then I started liking it in the second half. It becomes a little bit predictable, but like, I like where they're going, because they show the making of this movie that like they want to make, and she falls in love with a guy, and they make the movie, and they showcase the process of it, and they showcase the songwriter who kind of reminds me a little bit of Vanessa Carlton if she didn't make it big. So it's like this underground who was really talented but just didn't make it big, and she connects with these people, and they help her write a song, and like they teach her that she's good enough, and like, there's some really good moments, but then it gets into the predictable points where her mother's just like, oh well, the gig fell through, we have to leave, but you promised, and this whole thing, and then it resolves at the end. But it's just like, yeah, it's such a roller coaster because there are things that I do like about this. I like the process of making the movie. I like the characters. Aside from Stargirl, I feel she's a little bit too pretentious, but I like the rest of the characters and how a lot of them are old or retired filmmakers, and how like they grew better towards the world, but like they are slowly looking for new talent, and how she changes their lives. I just feel like near the end it just became the cliche predictable, oh no, we have this misunderstanding, we have a third act breakup, it you had me in the second half, not gonna lie.
Like, this is what Greater Than Nate should have been. Because this more realistically shows the whole process of trying to make a film, or at least trying to get, like, a, art project off the ground. And it shows them, failing at times, but persevering nonetheless. And again, it's by virtue of who they know that they're able to get where they ultimately get to. And again,
Exactly.
it's not just Stargirl just carrying everything. It's like, yes, she does create the inspiration, which gets the filmmaking brothers to ultimately go through with their project by using her as their actress and songwriter and stuff. But it's them that are mostly making stuff happen. And when things go wrong, they don't blame her for it. Like, they are actually understanding when things go bad for her. So I appreciate that far more than I did the first movie. And it's like, yes, the love interest is still kind of bland and boring, but he's still much better than the first guy.
I put this above Better Nate Than Ever, two films above, because like this is what Better Nate Than Ever should have been. There are points that I just did not care for, but I feel like the second half of the film, when it's showing the process, showing the writing, showing the passion, and showing how like even after they finished it and a lot of people like it, they don't get a lot of emails until the final one, and like there's a lot of realism in that, aside from the cookie cutter plot. Doug.
Yeah, I agree with you. This is definitely better than Nathan ever done better. I like, I was very much like with Cat. I'm like stewing in the very beginning moments of the film, being like, I'm gonna hate this thing. I'm gonna hate this thing. The first one sucked so much, and then finding myself like slowly or getting, my guard went down. Um, I like the fact that yeah, they do use their resources, but it's like, so for instance, they have the washed up musician played by Uma Thurman, and uh, they want to use her song for it, which yeah, be a great thing, but she's like, no, can't have it. And at first thing you think that she's being an asshole, but like it goes into Stargirl basically doing covers and singing other people's music all the time, using other people's music all the time. She sees the talent in Stargirl and wants her to actually use it to create her own song that they can use. Like she actually believes that she is capable of this, and she's trying very hard to get her to fall in that direction instead. Um, I like Judd Hurst. Like, I know originally he's like the, really angry old man neighbor, but he, warms up after a while. But I mean, that also kind of has to do with how Stargirl's very, personable. How she basically like turns all these people to have, more friendly natures to them. And I like how he reveals, oh, he was a producer once, and he tries to help them by giving them an old camera, but it's not one that they can actually use. And rather than be offended at that, he's like, you know what, you can sell it and get the equipment that you need. I'm like, wow, that's really cool. That kind of goes off, what normally these films would do. So yeah, I was very surprised by how much I actually liked this film.
It has points that I definitely didn't like. I feel like a lot of the writing in the beginning was a little bit clunky. and they're just stuff that I didn't care for, but I can see the charm in it, and it actually is attempting to do some good things. I feel like it needed another draft. I feel like it needed a second look at. And Uma Thurman's perfect. Uma Thurman's the best part of the film. But it's Uma Thurman, you know. I don't know. I feel like it needed another draft. It's not the worst thing ever, but it is.
I think
The first half is just painful.
I think part of the reason is because they were trying to go off the books, which this is based on, and I think they went too much off the books in the first one, and that's why it was so bad. So I guess in this one they tried to do it a little less, but still keep certain things. So I guess that's where you can tell where the book pops up and where, you know, the actual writers and directors made their creative decisions. Like
Hmm.
I didn't read the books personally. I know people who did who say that they're much better, but I don't know, like something went wrong in the transition between book and movie, especially in the first movie, and I feel like that was the same case here. Like it's gotta be,
Hmm.
given the direction they go with some of these. But like I said, they actually acknowledge the mistakes they made in the first one, and they actually correct it. So you know
And I can agree with that.
somebody somewhere like either saw my review or somebody else's review and said, yeah, if we're gonna do the sequel, we're gonna definitely like fix some things to make this more palatable for like modern audiences.
It kind of reminds me a bit of like The Lovely Bones or Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants. It's not a bad film, but I feel like it needed another pass, another take at it,
Mm.
um, before like really putting it out. Because as it stands, it's okay. There's parts that I don't like, and there's parts that I really like. So
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't watch this again, but you know, like I said, it exceeded my expectations substantially, especially given all the shitty sequels we've seen this year. So, you know, I give it kudos for that at the very least.
it's not the worst thing this year by far.
Hmm.
All right, our final one for this part, because we've been going on for 2 hours,
Yay.
but we had a lot to say about those last two films. This next one isn't necessarily bad. I classify it as half of a good film. So let's talk about Lightyear. I have it at number 7.
11.
Number 14, bottom of the barrel.
Wow, we had very different takes on that. I'm going to introduce the film and then we'll go from there. So, Lightyear is supposedly the film that Andy saw in theaters, which doesn't make a lot of sense. But it's a film about Buzz Lightyear. He lands on another colony, another planet far away from Star Command, and they have to establish, and he has to get them all home. And the first half is all about him doing his best, his damnedest to get them home. He loses years of his life because basically from the trip that they're trying to take is to get them to like light speed, but it has a time differential. So whenever he makes a trip, he comes back and the people are older. And I think this first half to me is really good because it shows like his determination, and he keeps feeling guilty about like seeing this family grow older, and he couldn't get his commanding officer and best friend home. And the second half is where it drops the ball. It's where Emperor Zurg attacks, and like on his final journey, and he has to stop Emperor Zurg with a ragtag group. And there's a twist at the end that we'll get into, and it's just weird because like also the son of his commanding officer or the grandson or whatever has shut down the project of getting them home, and he doesn't want that. And it's like they throw in that fake villain into the mix. He never really becomes a thing. I just feel like they really dropped the ball after the first half. I thought the first half was great. I thought the first half did really good at establishing the drive, his need to get home, and like I liked the companion, I liked Socks, I liked the characters. But the second half I just didn't care about. It was just all bad comedy, and the twist is bad, and just cat.
Yeah, I don't know what the idea was behind this. Like I sort of do, but it's like the execution of this was just horrible. It's like, okay, you want to tell the story of like the original movie that Andy saw, which led him to getting Buzz, which kicks off all the events of the Toy Story franchise. Okay, I get it. Here's the thing though. You kind of already did that with the Buzz Lightyear TV show, and that was awesome. So why do
Mm-hmm.
you need to do a movie? It's like, unless it's a movie based on the TV show, I don't see the point. But it's like, okay, I'll roll with it, see where they go. But here's the thing, every single choice they make doesn't make sense for the context of this movie, which supposedly aired in the 90s, around the time when the original Toy Story takes place. It just, nothing makes sense. And then, like you said, it starts off decent because, you're watching him with his partner, what was her name, Alicia, I think? And,
Yeah.
that is actually the best part, just seeing them interact, seeing them trying to, like, save everyone and get off the planet. But after she dies, and then he goes into the far future, that's when it just goes downhill. And it's like, after a while, you start thinking to yourself, is this really a Buzz Lightyear movie? Like, seriously? Because there's
It
this.
doesn't feel like it. There's just a sense of nihilism to it.
Yeah, because, like, nothing we know about the Buzz from the franchise carries over from this movie. And I mean, I guess you can make the argument that the toy doesn't necessarily reflect the character it's based on. I mean, we see all these other toys that have personalities, which we know are based on toys that have no character or personality at all. At least nothing established in like a TV show. But even so, it's like if you're banking on nostalgia, like why are you having Buzz say all these lines that Buzz as a toy says, like when Andy's not around, but he doesn't say the signature lines that's programmed into like his speech buttons. Like, really?
Yeah.
And then you introduce all these characters and stuff which we never hear about. Like the only other character we ever know about from the Buzz Lightyear line is Zurg. And like you said, we'll get to that part, just how much they butchered that. But it's like, what about
That
all these
was
other
so weird.
characters? And
And
especially,
and
go ahead.
I just want to say, I'm gonna bring this up again in Strange World, but the fact that they have gay characters, but there's such a background element, really irks me. It's like they have the commanding officer be gay, and have she marries, and they have an adoptive kid, but it's abandoned after like the first part of the film. It's barely a thing, and people are so up in arms about that. I'm up in arms at the fact that they don't do anything with these characters.
They really don't. And plus, again, going back to my point that this is supposed to be a film set in the 90s, there is no way they would have shown a gay couple in this like portrayal. Absolutely not. They wouldn't have even hinted at it. And then I'm not saying that they should have scrapped it at all. Like, I appreciate the representation. It just does not make sense for this film that's supposed to take place during this time period. And I mean, you can make the argument that, oh yeah, it's like a fantasy version of the 90s that we knew or something, where this was totally okay. But again, it's one of those things that really takes you out of it. And especially the theme and overall of it. Because, like, think about every single space film you've ever seen come out in the 90s. Do you know any of them that would have been this dark or this serious? Especially something that was geared toward kids? Like, really?
Yeah, not really.
Yeah.
Aliens is not for kids.
Right. And I mean, like I said, I know there are definitely like horror, like sci-fi stuff like that came out during that time. I'm not arguing that it doesn't, but I'm saying this is like a film that inspired this huge line of Buzz Lightyear toys that was apparently so popular that the toy stores couldn't meet the demand for it. So you know that this was specifically geared toward kids. So
Hmm.
that begs the question of like were parents really taking their kids to see this movie that had a lot of dark tones, a lot of mature tones, like concepts that they wouldn't get, and again featured a gay couple? Really?
Hmm.
Especially
Doug.
since especially since they didn't even have the cat in it. Like that makes no
Yeah,
sense.
why isn't Socks a figure? That would have done bangers. But sorry, Doug. What do you think?
from from that opening tag they did that said, there was this movie that came out in 1995 that a boy named Andy saw. This is that film. I'm like, no, no, it isn't. I knew, like, from that, I knew I was gonna hate this film. and it kept just giving me more and more reason. As you said, uh, the character just feels nothing like what the movie in 1995 that inspired Andy and a bunch of these kids to lose their shit and buy toys. And this does not feel like the kind of character that would sell toys. He doesn't say any of the lines that are programmed. Every line he says that's like an Easter egg is from the movie Toy Story, not from something, that's programmed into the toy when you push a button. Um, there, we're talking about the Buzz Lightyear of Star Command. I get that was like a straight-to-video movie, but enough people saw it. There was a Saturday morning cartoon of Buzz Lightyear Star Command. That did really well. I remember watching that a lot. Neither of those are on Disney Plus, and there was not a single reference to them. And I'm almost wondering if that was by design. If that is, they're strategically keeping Buzz Lightyear Star Command off of Disney Plus just for the sake of this movie. Um, this doesn't feel like some big action film that kids would want to watch. It's like you've got a freaking downer Buzz Lightyear character who is just so like I don't want to say survivor's guilt, but he feels so guilty over getting everybody stranded on this planet, and yet they wind up being so much happier on it. And it's like nobody really cheers him. Who cares? He's just blah. I liked Socks. Fine, he was cool. He'd be the merchandise.
Socks
Zurg
was
is
fun.
not Zurg.
Yeah, Zurg isn't Zurg.
Zurg is not Zurg. Fuck. What did you see the Lego Movie Part 2 and decide to make that twist?
I haven't seen the Lego Movie Part 2, but let's get into the twist now because I want to talk about this. I've been meaning to talk about this for ages. Look, despite this not being anything like Buzz Lightyear, I liked the first half of the film a lot because of the themes and stuff they were going for. It doesn't fit as an Andy's, as a film they were show kids, but I liked it. Then they get into the Zurg stuff, and it's like, okay, well, the robots that Zurg is putting out are saying, Bezurg, why are they doing that? The twist is that Buzz from the future is Zurg. No. Like, what the fuck?
Dumb.
It's an alternate universe Buzz where he saw that, he went too far into the future. He saw that they didn't need him, so he kept trying to find crystals, and he found the Zurg armor. And he found the robots who can't pronounce Buzz, so they call him Bezurg. So he's Zurg. No!
Like, that was really the best they could come up with for that. Ugh.
Yeah, that really irked me so bad. I'm like, did you never, see any of the Buzz Lightyear Star Command? This thing is, supposed to be the big baddie that is, it not just relegated to this one planet. It seems like he's supposed to be the villain of, an entire universe, or galaxy at least. And this is how you represent him? Somebody deserves to be fired over this. And not to mention, again, this is the film that wound up in theaters instead of turning red.
And this doesn't make any sense for it being Andy's film, because if Buzz was revealed to be Zurg, why would they want Buzz as a toy? Because, ultimately, he would become Zurg. Obviously fighting the Zurg menace, but it doesn't fit. It doesn't even fit with Toy Story, where he was really his father or brother, or, they made a joke about that. You can make a joke, but, sorry.
But it's not just that. The Zurg we see in the film looks nothing like the toy. Mm-hmm. How do you make a basic mistake like that? Like, I know we didn't really hear the Zurg toy say any signature phrases, so I can't tell if he, supposedly was supposed to say it in the movie or not, but just the overall design, because, is Zurg as the toy, he has like a whole Darth Vader thing going on, which I guess was the point. That was the reference. But in the movie, he's like this giant mech suit, and I'm like, how does this translate to the toys? It's like on the one hand, I agree it's within continuity of like the 90s because there was so many kids properties where they would make toys that looked nothing like the characters from the films and TV shows and stuff. That was always a big irksome thing for toy collectors. But even so, you really think kids would want to play with this sleek vampire looking thing as opposed to this giant mech toy, especially at a time where Transformers were really big? Really?
Especially the fact that the whole point is that's mocking Star Wars. They do it in Toy Story 2. Zurg and Buzz Lightyear, the whole Star Wars thing is, the aftermath of the Westward Ho. People were done with cowboy toys and they wanted space. That was the joke. This doesn't feel like it's in on the joke.
Not at all. And like you said, the other characters really aren't that interesting either. Like I said, the granddaughter, those 3 other characters that become part of his crew, none of them are really that interesting. They have one thing going for them, and that's it. And
one's a thief on juvie. One's afraid of space.
And then the other one is Taika Waititi, but not funny. It's like, how do you make Taika Waititi not funny? That's a travesty.
It's a shame.
Yeah, I don't know what they did with this. I don't know who's in charge of the decisions and stuff, but they made the wrong choice at every single turn. This does not fit in the continuity of what we know about Buzz Lightyear. This does not fit in the continuity of Toy Story. This could easily be a different film entirely. And the only reason anybody associates it with Toy Story is because it has the name Lightyear. That is the only connection.
I have a theory that this is 2 films rolled into one, because the first half does nothing. It feels nothing like the second half. And it's setting up the son of the commander of the base who has all the shields set up. It sets him up as a villain. They never follow through with that because he's in his shield, in his bubble, and he never gets to come up, and then it just suddenly Zurg. It feels like 2 different films.
It may as well be.
Yep. Mm-hmm. There's some rookie at the very beginning of the film that they kind of almost hint that he might be the villain too. And it's just that goes nowhere.
It's such a shame that it feels directionless, and it's I put it a little bit higher because I do I put it number 7 because I like it for the first half. And yes, it doesn't mesh with anything that we know, but at least the first half establishes good themes and ideas and then just drops them. So it's it's okay. I didn't hate it, but I didn't love it. It's it's 7 for a reason. It's middle of the road. It's meh.
Yeah, I just would never watch this again. I don't consider it part of the Toy Story canon or anything in that regard. This is some person's fanfic, an AU of how they think Buzz, came about and his backstory and stuff, and they just opted to ignore the entire TV series. That's pretty much how I see this. I will say one funny bit that I did read about though. So you know that Chris Evans voices Buzz Lightyear, right?
Yes.
And James Brolin voices Zurg. So at the movie's premiere, Chris Evans actually went up to James Brolin, who he hadn't met before, and he apologized for beating up his son. James Brolin's son is Josh Brolin, who played Thanos. So I'm thinking to myself, great. So Chris Evans beat up both Zurg and Thanos. He beat up both father and son. Wow, he's an awful person.
Beat up himself.
Final thoughts, Mr. Doug.
I probably would have given this over Chip and Dale if not for the fact that I didn't really have much of a history with Chip and Dale Rescue Rangers. But I feel like this just fails even more. Like, I feel like there's something to Chip and Dale, but to say that this movie is the one that Andy watched as a kid is the largest crime. If I were Andy's age watching this film, I would have been bored. I wouldn't have wanted a toy of this character. I would have wanted to leave the theater or run around the theater and annoy everybody because I'm so bored.
Or have socks. What? Socks.
Or socks. Okay, socks I'll get.
Yeah.
But yeah, I feel this film certainly gets a bad rap for people getting angry over the wrong thing with having the lesbian couple, which it was fine, but again, it would never have shown up in this film in '95 or any time in
and
the
it
90s.
has no bearing on any of the film, which is like
no.
And here's the thing, like Disney keeps doing this thing where this is the first ever gay couple in a Disney film shown on screen. I'm just like, yeah, cool. What are you doing with it? Do they have characters? Is there
they just going to be in the background?
Yeah, like I've gotten so
that's
numb
all you got
to this. It's like
yeah.
I've said this before, but I should enjoy having representation because representation matters, as we said with Cheaper by the Dozen. But the fact that this isn't representation, this is just they're there. Like, do something with your characters. I have to keep demanding more because not only that, but like all the lobbying and stuff against gay and trans people, like I have to keep standing up and asking more. We need more because people are saying that I don't have the right to exist. So it's like, and I don't like making this political, but my existence is not political debate. So, I'm just here to say that if you're watching this show, if you're listening to this podcast and you don't support trans people or gay people, bye. You have no place here. I'm sorry. That's how it is.
We don't need you. Go back into your hole.
Yep.
Honestly, the thing that's been bothering me lately about Disney is that they include these diverse characters both as a lip service, but also as a scapegoat. It's like, it feels like they know deep down that certain movies are gonna turn out bad, so their solution is to include as many ethnically diverse people as possible, so that way people can't say it's bad without seeming homophobic or racist. Like, I actually saw a review of someone who pointed this out specifically in terms of the Little Mermaid movie, and both the Tinkerbell movie the Peter Pan, which features Tinkerbell. And I'm starting to see that trend too, and it really bothers me because it's like, you should have representation because, these people exist. They deserve to be acknowledged, and these are roles that anybody should be able to play in the right context. As long as they have, the acting ability, as long as they can fulfill the role without it being too distracting. But it honestly feels like at this point, like, while Disney says that they're allies, it feels like they're just giving more ammunition to making people who are ethnically diverse more of a target. And that really bothers me, especially like you said with what's going on in Florida right now. Like,
yeah. It's a shame. And it's like, I work at Bath and Body Works. While I do not like rainbow capitalism, I feel like Bath and Body Works has actually been the best company to work for as a trans people. Because, like, as a trans woman, they're supportive. I told them all what's going on, and they're like, "Yeah, let's help you out. And there's a lot of like gay and trans people who work there, and I'm allowed to put my pronouns in my name tag. Like that's good decisions, and that shows to me that this company's fine. But with Disney, it's performative.
It's like they'll have gay days at Disney, but they won't like openly acknowledge it or really defend them to like any big entity, and it really shows. It's like,
Mm.
oh, we just support you. We'll give you like support under the table, but we're not gonna come out there and
Mhm.
upset, our Chinese viewers or any of like the lobbyists that are helping us keep our copyright. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's
And
disheartening.
previously I shut my mouth on this stuff, but not, since last year I've started talking more and more, and I think some of this needs to be said. I don't want it to be the entire focus of the Disney debate, but when we do a lot of these end of year reviews with these films, it's easy to see the performative capitalism and how, they say they're allies and then they do stuff like this. And we're going to talk more about this with Strange World too.
Hmm.
So it's like I can't not bring it up because I'm trans, and there are things that we need to discuss. I don't want to make the entire podcast about it, but I got to talk about it.
See, this is what happens when Disney releases like a bunch of shitty films in a row that we have to talk about. This just brings out all the outrage in us, and we just no longer care. We're just gonna speak our minds, and y'all are gonna have to deal with it. Plus,
And I'm
you
not sorry because
hmm
if you don't support us, then I'm sorry. I don't know what to tell you. I I'm a person. I deserve rights. So
hmm yeah. So that ends our like the first half of shittiness from 2022. Like I said, Lightyear was a bad thing to cap it off, but that was honestly the best point in my opinion. I don't think the second half fares much better, but we will get into that. But yeah, just keep in mind, like, expect a lot of rage from us over certain things, both in the future and whatnot. Because look at what we have to deal with, people. Look at all the live actions coming out. Like, you really think we're gonna take this lying down here? No, we are gonna just voice our displeasure because somebody needs to hear it. Somebody who can actually make changes.
as much as a Disney fan as I am, I'm not gonna sit there and eat shit when it's shoveled into my face.
Hmm.
And we've talked about like some of the worst, but next batch has like not as bad, but like some really bad stuff, and it's just like this year really broke me in terms of like, man, I like Disney, but like they did a lot of bad things. Doug, any final thoughts before I sign us off?
Oh yeah. This year, man, this year, I just really hope that we don't wind up regretting putting Iger back into position. I know we're already kind of experiencing a lot of the backlash from him coming back and having a lot of stuff delayed, but I'm really hoping it is nowhere near as bad as just the oversaturation of crap that we got in 2022.
With that being said, um, with that being said, I am Zenith, warrior princess, the cutest of ghost buns,
I'm Kat McBerry.
I'm Doug McBarry.
and we will see you in part two. But just remember, while I may be angry right now, there are some good stuff on the horizons. Everything isn't awful, and we only yell because we care.
Nothing wrong with passion, people. Just make sure it's in the right direction.
I care about you so much because you're so fuzzy.
You're so fluffy. Four Town forever. Four Town.
Fuck Chippendale! Fuck it to
You're
hell!
never not on my
Fuck
mind. My
Lightyear.
mind, my mind. I'm never not by your side. All right. Bye, everybody.
Leah!
Till next time.